So my mom likes to argue about, buttons, socks, beards, and my haircut, and um and I explained to her, like, these things don't matter in the year 2026, right? The world's in such a dire position that these things don't matter, right? These things don't matter. Um and this is the whole thing with Jennifer Pan and being strict. In my opinion, the society is way too strict. I would disobey my parents if it meant that I live, if I'm doing the right thing, right? How many people obeyed their parents or obeyed some military campaign, and I mean, I hate to use the terminology, but mindless goy, right? They weren't critical thinkers. They just did whatever the person said, the politician said, go fight in my war, right? And they go there and do it, right? Like, no one's fighting in my war personally, right? I mean, somebody already did, but like, I don't talk about those things, right? I could talk about every problem and Jennifer Pan, and I remember I mentioned her 5 years ago, so that's why it's relevant, because it already happened, right? Um, and I'm trying to not come off a certain way. There's probably lots of people using some extremely strong, not even just psychedelic, but like extremely strong drugs like methamphetamine to try to convolute a different result, a different outcome for the situation in my life and people around. Excuse me, I gotta get a breather. But I'm just saying, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that um the person did this. They they decided to whatever. I already explained that it's not my fault that like, okay, I posted a video with the guy being like, I posted a video where the guy was like, what's next, Gay History Month, and why we don't have a White History Month. And I mean, we all know what that means. We all know the relevance of the video. We all know how the average white person kind of comes off, and how we've quantified people's lives and how they talk, and yeah, you can quantify all these things. I don't know how much you can, but you can actually quantify these things. Especially when we tied things down to money, to say like, because they're wealthy, you know they're a nice person. So it's not because by default that they could be nice or something. Like, my mom's efforts at U of T, despite that, she didn't help the homeless. I mean, I've been pulling like extended sleepovers since like 2005. So that's like, that's just the straight up truth, right? I mean, how I see the world and all these things, that's not relevant to like any other person or thing. That's not between me and them, right? That's just me making a statement, right? I can make a statement, and I could I don't even try to like mind control anybody, right? These videos were never meant to be like, they're not even advice, they're not suggestions. They're not any kind of you know um they're just statements, right? They're just statements I'm making. But in regards to, okay, I posted such a video. I don't know if the video would reflect me. I don't know if the message makes sense, in regards to people can be, again, one person online, and offline they can be entirely different. And even offline, right? This is a horrible thing about the world, that offline you could be whatever kind of person you want offline, right? And the extreme nature of the society, and you could be whatever person you want offline, right? And I mean, but you could still have one thought in your mind. Like, you could come off one way, right? You could behave a certain way. You could come off a certain way. You could you could no you can come off a certain way, right? You could come off a certain way. uh but you can lie, right? You can lie to a person, right? Just because you say something in person doesn't mean it's not what you were actually thinking. And even your voice, if it changes, it makes no difference, right? And and obviously, like, on an objective standard, right? On an objective scale, right? Like, right is right and wrong is wrong, and that's that, right? Um and again, it was never my intention to complicate my life circumstance, the lives of my peers, with these videos and this system. The system is the way it is, right? I can't control that. The fact that it's built up a certain way, it is built up a certain way. But what I do know, and what I can say is that morality is objective, right? So you could say whatever you want on that. You could be a good person the way I was back in 2007 and whatever, but it holds no bearing, because what ends up happening is money gets involved, right? Money gets involved, and you've objectified all these things, and even your right to privacy doesn't exist, because you don't own the house you live in, right? 99% of people are living on like a mortgage or something. So what capacity are you giving this person, right? And obviously it could be related to morals, and mainly speaking, in terms of the videos, like, it all goes back to generalization that, like, okay, like, I can mindlessly be 6 years old, going to the elementary school, and going home and watching like a TV show, and then repeating that, and then you have a routine, right? You have some kind of routine, and you just kind of follow through on it, and that's probably the most ethical choice I'd make. But some of that's common sense, and I know some people might look at the person a certain way, and they might be like, you're welcome to our ranks, number 2,000, 20,000, whatever, right? And then on the other hand, the person could be like, welcome to our ranks, number 20,000. But on the other hand, the person, they might pull it off, and they might be like, I mean, for me personally, right? I wouldn't want to get into conflict of any kind, right? Because I'm no longer physically and mentally fit, as you can see with the cane. I'm no longer able to like fight anymore. My life has been very stressful. Very, very, like, very stressful, physical and psychological pain. Arguing with my mom over these like little socks and whatever. It takes its toll on people. Like, people like arguing over mundane things is not worth it. It's not worth it to live your life that way. And so because I'm just analyzing this like an objective, like, objective. I don't view the world as a computer game, right? Again, like, some people might commodify it like that. They quantify it in their mind like that. I don't know what's going on in other people's mind. You could program your mind, and you can program your mind properly, and that's what should be happening. And again, this is coming from the guy whose mom worked at U of T, so it's relevant because I am born and raised Canadian citizen. I've gone through the system. I think it's a failure of a system. But obviously I partake the best I can. Sorry, I gotta get a breather. I partake the best I can. I have, my own grievances, my own time that was wasted, and obviously, like, with everything that happens in the world and the disagreements people have, obviously we're not expecting people to hold hands and whatever, but the problem, like, the thing is like, the old saying goes, like, it's a tragedy not when men fear the dark, but when men fear the light, right? Because we can easily forgive a child who fears the dark when men fear the light. I mean, you have to look at the real world for what it is. You have to be informed on all these things, which is the purpose of this video, right? Unfortunately, there's just too many hazards, too many threats in order to prevent, the next tragedy, the next, shooting, or the next hazard, or, the next issue, right? Because unfortunately, like, we know that hazards happen. When I was a lifeguard, we talked about these hazards. We talked about, securing a pool and, preventing hazards and removing, it was like no gas, no glass, no glass, no gas, no fire, no wire, something like that, right? No gas, no fire, no wire. No, but like, no, I'm saying like preventing tragedies and death before it happens. It's a skill and it can be used, right? Like people, it only takes basic common sense. Like it's surprising, right? How some people are so stupid and they allow, the tragedies that occur to occur. And these videos were meant to be like on a needless to say level because you're not supposed to be saying anything at all, right? After 2012, we knew that these people, they call them boys of silence. They'll go in, they would do what they have to do, and then they fucking disappeared. And I'm mark my words, these developers of these computer games, whether they came from our world, like a version where whether they came from our world, a version where whether or not they came from our world, a version where the world, I guess, where men really act on their impulses and they really decide, we want to tussle it out. We want to go with the conflict, right? And that's what a lot of this is about. It's about confrontation and going through with it, right? You don't need to go through every confrontation that you get into. But like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna cross. I'm gonna cross here. I'm gonna go left anyway. So, like I said, if the best that Ottawa can provide is Algonquin College, then or like U Ottawa or whatever they have, then that's what they have, right? If you wanna sit there on like a third person perspective and judge the person and be like, you want to like, on a third person perspective, you're sitting there and you're like, you're judging, or you're like, want to be like, oh, this is what the average Ottoan is like, or this is what the average Canadian is like. But granted, we already know that Canada, stated by Prime Minister Trudeau, that Canada is a postmodern nation that has no real identity. So, obviously some people take offense to a statement like that. They believe that he's basically saying that, there's no identity at all. And, like people interpret that in different ways. And I'm actually surprised because I don't believe it's an objective statement, but I believe that it is something that has to do with like, has something to do with the basics of just, excuse me, a postmodern nation, that has no identity, and people who might have fought for an identity, who fought for a country, right? They might interpret a statement like that and view it differently. And these statements go without saying, right? Like they're unfortunate that these statements had to be made, and it's like, because these statements are relevant, because you have to ask, why would people want to continue society? Why would they want to continue like a civil discourse, to continue communicating in a civil manner? Like what's the point in all it, right? Like especially if it's coming from someone whose parents are divorced from the get-go. What would drive me forward, right? Wouldn't be starting a family. That wouldn't be my life, right? And I'll admit it, like in my heyday, I've been a force of chaos. I've been a force of chaos and destruction. And like, you could live, you can see my life, and you can see the way I live, and trying to view it like even with like a glass half full type of perspective, you quickly see that like, obviously I'm trying, like, I understand like morality is now objective, it's not subjective. And I'm just interpreting. I see and experience the world in my nervous system, and I interpret it how I interpret it, and it's still through a filter, right? I'm treating straight as objective as I can. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, and that's the whole thing, right? Because I don't even know what's going on anymore, right? These people are popping in out of nowhere, portals in the sky and whatever, and it's not really fair if you had to be honest. And now, going back to the past, obviously I can just throw a statement there and just be like, anything is possible, right? And that's all just an excuse. It's the same bread and circus excuse for why being like, oh yeah, the world's just messed up and there's nothing you can do, and all this craziness that happens in my life and the lives of others should just be tolerated because the world is just a crazy place, and you know the world's just a crazy place, and whatever, what I mean, like, oh yeah, the world's just a crazy place, and you just gotta accept that, and you just gotta accept a lower quality of life, accepting a lower standard of living, and it's like you'd almost accept that like, oh yeah, that's it, that's the best you can aspire for, right? And I'm trying to cut through here. Because obviously people will ask, like, what would be the purpose of continuing such a society where it's a postmodern nation, and there is no identity, and you're not really fighting for anything, and obviously that statement holds merit, because Canada sort of became a criminal haven, right? So, like, kind of like Australia and the penal colony thing, that's kind of like Canada, except it was not the intention, right? There's just so many people, there's so many bureaucracy, there's so many problems that, and there's so much crime that, it kind of just fails because it doesn't actually work. It fails because, literally, because the average person's hands are basically tied in terms of helping themselves and other people. Like, they're basically, the entire system suggests that, you can't do anything. These degrees are the only means of you ever legally helping another person within, like, public, within societal standards, and objectively, to help them, you have to be this person. And if you don't have this degree, if you don't have this level of respect, then it's not happening in the society, and it's like predetermined by someone else. So this barrier to do things, to like be a paramedic, to, I don't know, to do like a bare minimum of helping another person, or like working a job, that's respectable. Like, these barriers make it difficult to do these things. Like, being a family doctor is something that you need. Because of these barriers to be a police officer, people resort to crime because it's much faster and quicker, right? And so obviously some of these criminals, like, some of this stuff is kind of hilarious. You read, it's like, oh, he really stole that car, and he did it like this. And being straight up objective, like, it's obviously sad, right? Like, I don't hold any judgment there. Some of these things are very gruesome and sad. Canada kind of is like Cuba. It's a playground for the rich, and it's sort of also like it used to be a playground for the criminals as well. But then again, even the criminals, like the whole thing of being a criminal, like, originally, like, okay, so the first thing is, like, okay, we know that the real world rewards bad behavior, right? I mean, that like, real world money, and whether it's because of a stimulus, like, people need to see lights moving. My dad works as the electrician guy, so he can make the lighting effect or whatever, right? And if people need to constantly be stimulated or whatever, so be it, right? I want to fucking go and cross the street. 1 second. So, like I said, Whether people need, constant stimulation like moving lights or TikTok, or gold, literally, because gold is because people don't realize this is all related to gold, because gold is of something of value that's been objectively of value since the beginning. And obviously everybody knows, alien reptilians came here. They genetically modified humans by connecting, by inbreeding an ape with an alien of their own, like their own, alien reptilians, or like some kind of, like a crossbreeding program, where they create a hybrid species out of, an alien reptilian and out of, one of the chimps here on this planet, right? So they created this hybrid species, and that species, the humans, like their whole purpose was just to mine gold. So they needed like an obedient populace that would mine gold, and that's basically like the entire purpose of humanity. There isn't, and everybody's read the conspiracy theories. Everybody knows what they are. Like they know the government. Crack epidemic. Like they purposely planted crack dens, and the government purposely created diseases, and the government purposely, like, what's it called? The government, purposely, like, crack dens, and the government purposely, like, what's it called? I mean, we obviously know police brutality and the government, blaming them for a lot of things. I know the Federal Reserve, right? We pay a lot of money for money that they print out of thin air, and the elites, and hoarding money, and population mind control, and we know that the government purposefully does these things. And then obviously this information is useless, because it the conspiracy theories about, like, oh yeah, they purposefully banned marijuana because it would awaken their third eye, and the population would become awoke. They wake up, and obviously there's merit to that statement. But ultimately, to some extent, the government is like human beings. But like, I was in a high school, like 1,700 to 2,800 people. Like, some of these people would never show up. Some of them would like probably do like online school. Some of them, there's obviously the pandemic, and then some of them would like and obviously the incompetency of the average person, just like, it'll make you shake your head. I mean, these videos weren't made to produce such a video, right? These videos weren't made to tragically to these videos are a critical analysis on the current situation, and trying to even understand what the fuck is going on, right? Because again, like in BioShock Infinite, right? So the person marries whatever, or portals appearing in the sky, and people like breaking in and stealing your stuff, and you don't even know what happens, because there's just so many people, and there's so many things happening, and you don't even catch a whiff of it. No, but like, the thing is the only reason I'm in the plumbing program is really just an excuse to make these videos. And I already said, after this, I'm living in a tent, so like, like I'm kind of defeated. I feel awful, because these things, the way things turned out, there was always these chaos and these issues, and for my parents, I guess they refuse to look at it, or they think that obviously humor is like a coping mechanism, but like like the human condition is just very grim in the year 2026. Like, if you're a nihilist, you're gonna feel it like tenfold. But I don't know how my parents would even justify like bringing me into this world. Like how these things occurred is just, it's just so awful. Like, you can't even make it up. Like, these TV shows and all this stuff, like, that even adds to the problem, because it makes you less self-aware. It makes you less pertinent to the initial intention of why you were even born, right? If the initial intention was that you get a job, get a career, and all that, I would rather go the full circuit than rather fucking beat around the bush and watch these stupid movies and TV shows and goy slop. And these actors, all of them deserve to be like hung by a noose, like, you know, like lynch all these fucking stupid actors. Like, I'm talking about the ones that would produce those 1950s fucking movies. Like, they lost all respect and credibility in my book, because I don't have the conscious capacity to fucking care about other people in the year 2026 when I fucking have all these fucking problems to deal with, along with having to deal with you know, I don't have the fucking capacity to deal with, you know, all these fucking problems on top of, you know, stupid actors. Like my I have only so much limited like mental, like social battery and mental capacity and energy to argue and to analyze and to because there's just so many fucking problems, right? There's so many fucking problems that like it's fucking terrible, right? Like, I wake up and I'm in fucking stress. I go to bed, I'm fucking stressed out. You know,